Hey everyone, welcome back to the second part of our tutorial series on how to create a first-person controller inside of Unity using their new input system. Now in the last lesson I showed you how to create the basic movement controls for your first-person controller using the WASD keys on your keyboard. In this lesson we want to start creating what's called the look mechanic, and this is the ability to use your mouse to look around and rotate your character. Now there's two parts to the look mechanic. There's the horizontal rotation of your character and the vertical rotation of your camera. In this lesson, I'm only going to show you how to do the horizontal rotation, and in the next lesson, I'll show you how to do the vertical rotation. Now, before we begin, make sure that you subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you can get updates when we publish new videos. So here I have my project open inside of Unity, and the first thing that I want to do is demonstrate what I'll be showing you in this lesson. So I'm going to click play. I'm then going to make sure that I have my first-person controller game object selected in the hierarchy. And I'm also going to make sure that I set the transform tool to local space instead of global space. This will make it so that the Z-axis of our move tool is pointing in the forward direction for our first-person controller game object. So now when I click in the game scene and I use my WASD keys, you can see how I can move around in the scene. And so when I press W, my player moves forward. When I press A, my player moves to the left. When I press S, my player moves backwards. And when I press D, my player moves to the right. And these were all the controls that we created in the last video. But now when I use my mouse and I move it to the left, you can see how my player rotates horizontally to the left. And then when I move it to the right, my player also rotates to the right. But currently we don't have anything for the vertical movement of my mouse. And so in this video, I'm going to show you how to add in that horizontal rotation to our first-person controller. So the first thing that we need to do is go over to our input actions window, which I have docked right here. If you currently don't have it open, then you can open it by double-clicking on your input actions file, which I have right here. So here you can see that I have my FPS action map, and I think I'm actually going to rename this to FPContoller. And the reason why I want to do that is because FPS stands for first-person shooter, but we're creating a first-person controller. You can then see we have our move action, which is the action that we created in the last video. And then here you can see I have a new action called Rotation X. And you can create this action by clicking on this plus sign up at the top next to Actions. You can then give this action a name like Rotation X. I'm going to name mine Rotation X2. We then want to select this empty binding and set a new path. And the path that I'm going to set is under Abstract Devices and then Mouse. And I want to search for Delta X. Now that's everything that you need to do to create this new action. But since I already have this action, I'm going to delete the duplicate. We're then going to click on Save Asset so that it can update our input controller script. Now it looks like I'm receiving some errors, and that's because we changed the name of our action map. So I'm going to double click on our first error, and that'll open it up in Visual Studios. So right here you can see I'm receiving the error where it says FPS, and that's because it no longer likes this term. So I'm going to double click on it, and then I'm going to type FPContoller. I'm then going to copy this and paste it in wherever I have FPS. And so now what I want to do is show you the code that you need to add in order to implement the horizontal rotation. So we're first going to scroll up to the top where we need to add in a new variable. And the variable that I've added in is this one here. I've set this to be a serialized field because it's a private variable, which is of type float, and I've called it horizontal rotation speed. Once you have this variable, the next thing that we need to do is register to our new action event. And we'll do this within the onEnable function. And these are the two lines of code that we need to add to this function. So first off, I access our input control script. I then access our action map, which is now called FPContoller. And then I want to access the new action called Rotation X. And then I want .performed. We're then using the += operator to register this callback function, which I've called rotation access Y. Now one important thing to note about the horizontal rotation of your first-person controller is that the input that we are using is the movement of your mouse in the X direction. However, in order to get a horizontal rotation of our first-person controller, we need to use the Y-axis of this transform. And that's why over here I have rotation X, which might not actually be the best name to use. There we go, that's better. I changed it to MouseX. Here you can see I changed the name of our action to MouseX as well. And so I have MouseX over here and rotation axis Y over here. To better demonstrate this, I'll go to our scene view, and here I have our rotation tool. Now you can see we have 3 circles. One is red, one is a yellow-green for our Y-axis, and then one is blue for our Z-axis. Now if I grab the X-axis of this object and I rotate it, you can see how this isn't the rotation that we want. If I grab the blue circle and rotate our object, you can see how this also isn't the rotation that we're looking for. But if I grab the green circle and rotate our object, you can see how that is the rotation that we're looking for. And if we go over to the inspector, you can see how there's a different value set in the Y-axis. So once we have this line of code, we then need to enable this action event. And so I'll type input controls.fpcontroller.mousex.enable. Once we have these 2 lines of code, we can then copy them and then paste them into our onDisable function right here. We'll then want to change the plus equals operator to a minus equals operator, and then change the enable to disable. Once we've registered to this action event, we then need to create this callback function, which is called rotation axis Y. So down here at the bottom of our script, I have this private void function called rotation axis Y. And then the parameter that we need to set is an input action.callbackContext. And I've called this context. Inside this function, the first thing that we want to do is read in the input value, and I'm going to save this into a local variable. So here I have my local variable, which is of type float, and I've called it yRotate. I'm then going to set it equal to context, which is our parameter, and then .read value, and we're looking for a float. On the next line of code, we then want to rotate this transform by that input value. And so I'm calling transform.rotate, and the parameter that we're passing in is a new vector 3. For the X, I'm setting it equal to 0, and then for the Y value, I'm setting it equal to the local variable called yRotate, and then for the Z, I'm passing in a 0. We then want to multiply this all by our horizontal rotation speed, and then we're going to also multiply it by time.delta time to slow it down a bit. Now this is the last thing that we need for this script, so I'm going to save my script and then go back to Unity. Inside Unity, all we have to do is select our first-person controller script, and we should already have our FPS controller script attached to this game object, which I should rename that script. And then all we have to do is set our horizontal rotation speed value. And I'm just going to set it to 2. Now with that value set, everything should be working properly. So let's play through our game and test it one more time. Alright, so here you can see that my player is moving around in the scene as I press the WASD keys. And then as I move my mouse to the right, you can see that my player is also rotating to the right. And then if I move my mouse to the left, my player rotates to the left. Now, the coolest part about this mechanic is that these work in unison. And so it doesn't matter which way I'm facing, my game object will always be walking forward in its local space as I press W. And the same thing goes for the 3 other keys. Now that's everything that we're going to cover in this lesson on how to program the horizontal rotation of your first-person controller. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you did, make sure that you give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, then leave them in the comments below or join our Discord server. And finally, make sure that you subscribe to our channel so you can be up to date on all our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.